My wife told me I wasn't alpha enough for her, so I let her leave, went silent, and now she cries, watching me win from afar. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and I used to think that confidence was about showing up every day, being reliable, being present, being calm. I never saw it as something loud or dominant. But my wife, Tessa, did. She wanted the fire, the flash, the chaos that looks like control. We met in our mid-20s, both working at a marketing firm in downtown Chicago. She was magnetic. Sharp heels, sharper wit, the kind of woman who could command a room without even trying. I was drawn to her ambition instantly. She talked about our future like it was already written. Joint business ventures, weekend retreats in the mountains, a power couple life. And honestly, I believed her. I believed in us. At first, we were unstoppable. We'd spend late nights planning our goals over takeout and red wine, laughing about how we'd retire by 40. She admired my work ethic, said I had stable energy that calmed her. I admired her drive, the way she turned rejection into fuel. We were a balance, or so I thought, but then little comments started slipping out. At a dinner party, she'd say, "Babe, you're too nice. You let people walk all over you." I'd laugh it off, but it stung. One night, after watching a documentary about CEOs, she said, "I wish you were more like that guy. Decisive, aggressive." When I asked what she meant, she brushed it off. "I just want you to unlock your potential." She framed it like encouragement, improvement, like I was a half-finished project she could sculpt into the real man she believed I could be. And I tried to see it that way too. But something in her tone told me this wasn't about growth. It was about control. And that's when the cracks began to form. It didn't happen all at once. It was a slow erosion, like being chipped away with a dull knife. Tessa had this way of making me feel small without ever raising her voice. We'd be out with friends and she'd interrupt me mid-sentence to correct my facts. At first, I assumed she just wanted accuracy, but then it became a pattern. If I mispronounced something or paused too long, she'd laugh and say, "You're cute when you try to sound smart." Everyone else would laugh too. I'd laugh with them, masking the sting with a smile I didn't feel. At a friend's engagement party, someone asked how we divide chores at home. I said we split things fairly. Tessa immediately jumped in. "Yeah, I mean, if I wait long enough, he eventually does the dishes." The joke landed. People laughed. I just stared at my glass. Later that night, I asked her, "Why'd you say that?" She rolled her eyes. "Relax, it's just banter. You're too sensitive. You want to be a leader but can't take a joke?" I didn't respond. I just nodded, but inside, something sank. She started following a bunch of alpha male influencers on Instagram. Guys in suits shouting into their phones about dominance, status being high value. At first, I found it ironic. But she began quoting them. "A real man doesn't ask, he takes." Masculinity is about command, not compromise. I'd be lying if I said it didn't affect me. I started wondering if I was the problem. Maybe I was too passive. Maybe love wasn't enough. She said she wanted me to grow, but every time I tried to step up, she moved the goalpost. It wasn't growth she wanted. It was submission to her vision. And still, I stayed. Because at the time, I thought if I loved her hard enough, she'd love me back the way she used to. It was a Thursday night, one of those boring, gray evenings where the world feels too quiet. I was sitting in the living room working on a client pitch, half listening to Tessa pacing in the bedroom while on the phone with one of her friends. She didn't know I could hear her, and I wish I hadn't. I heard her laugh, sharp and bitter. "He's just too soft, you know? Like, I don't feel that pull. He's stable, but he doesn't lead. I need someone who makes decisions, who walks into a room and owns it." Her words gutted me. I froze. It wasn't just a complaint, it was disdain. That wasn't the voice of someone venting about a rough patch in their marriage. It was the voice of someone disappointed with the man she'd married. I didn't confront her right away. I went to bed that night staring at the ceiling, feeling like a stranger in my own life. The next morning, I asked her straight up, "Do you think I'm not enough for you?" She blinked, surprised. "Where's this coming from?" I hesitated, then said, "I heard what you said on the phone." Instead of apologizing, she looked annoyed. I was venting. "Everyone vents. You're overreacting." "I don't think I am," I said quietly. She sighed, like she was talking to a child. "Look, I'm just trying to help you become the best version of yourself. But you're always stuck in your comfort zone. You could be so much more if you stopped playing it safe." That's when it hit me. She didn't see me as a partner. She saw me as a project, and no matter how hard I tried, I'd never be enough for the image she had in her head. But instead of leaving, I doubled down because I still believed I could fix it. After that night, something inside me went quiet. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was just tired. Tired of trying to prove my worth to someone who kept moving the finish line. Tessa, on the other hand, seemed more energized than ever. She started filling her calendar with networking nights and branding meetups, and came home later and later. She'd walk through the door smelling like perfume I didn't recognize, tossing her heels to the side while scrolling her phone, barely looking at me. "Hey," I'd say. "Mm-hmm," she'd mumble, eyes glued to her screen. Conversations turned into checklists. "Did you pay the power bill?" "Yes." "Okay, I'm going to sleep. Big day tomorrow." I began eating dinner alone most nights, reheating leftovers in a silent kitchen. The chair across from me stayed empty, her phone lighting up on the counter with notifications I no longer had the energy to ask about. One night, I tried. "Can we talk?" I asked. She looked up from her laptop, expression blank. "About what?" "Us." She blinked, then shrugged. "We're fine." "You're just in your feelings again," I wanted to scream. But I didn't. Instead, I just nodded. "Okay." That became my default. "Okay," every time she belittled my opinions. Every time she brushed off my affection. Every time she made me feel like an accessory in her highlight reel. I told myself things would get better when she found herself, when her business stabilized, when she finally felt proud of me. But the truth was, she wasn't drifting away. She was leaving, slowly, deliberately, piece by piece, and I was too, afraid to admit it, because admitting it meant I'd have to face what our marriage had become. It was a Saturday night, one of those social things I used to enjoy before they became minefields. We're at her coworker's rooftop birthday party, a trendy, overpriced place downtown where the music was too loud and everyone was pretending to be cooler than they were. Tessa looked stunning. Of course, deep red dress, glass of rosé in hand, laughing like she didn't have a care in the world. I stuck close to the edge, sipping a watered-down drink and trying not to feel like an outsider in my own marriage. That's when I saw it. She was leaning in too close to a tall, muscular guy I vaguely recognized from her stories, Darren, her new business mentor or whatever. She touched his arm when she laughed, tilted her head just a bit too far. I looked away, but the real gut punch came later. We were gathered in a circle, swapping stories. When someone brought up relationship dynamics, Tessa, drunk and unfiltered, looked right at me and said, "Honestly, I think some men are just born leaders. Others, well, they make great supporters." The group laughed awkwardly. I laughed too, not because it was funny, because I didn't want them to see how much it cut. Later that night, as we walked to the car, I didn't say a word. "Why are you so quiet?" she asked, fumbling with her clutch. I stopped walking. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone." She rolled her eyes. "It was a joke. Grow a thicker skin. God, sometimes I feel like I'm married to a sensitive little boy." I didn't respond. I just unlocked the car and drove. But something changed on that ride home. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel desperate. I felt done. And for the first time, I realized silence could be power too. The next morning, I woke up before her. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, just staring at the floor, listening to her breathe. And something about that silence, it felt heavier than any argument we'd ever had. She stirred around 9, groaning. "God, my head is killing me. Did I say anything stupid last night?" I didn't sugarcoat it. Yeah, you said you felt like you were married to a little boy. Her eyes snapped open. Oh, come on. You're still on that? No, I said calmly. I'm done with that. She sat up, defensive now. I was drunk. It was a joke. I'm not laughing anymore, Tessa. That shut her up. For the first time in a long time, she didn't have a comeback. I stood up. You keep telling me I'm not alpha enough, not dominant enough, not man enough. But here's the truth. You didn't want a man. You wanted someone to shape, then resent. She narrowed her eyes. Don't act like I held you back. You never pushed yourself. Because I was busy holding us together while you were busy trying to replace me with a fantasy. That landed. She looked away. Then came the final blow. She crossed her arms and said, Maybe we're just not compatible. Maybe I need someone. Stronger, I smiled. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I was finally free. Then go find him, I said. You don't need to stay, she blinked. That's it? No fight? No, I said, grabbing my keys. You already won that months ago. She left that evening, dragging 2 suitcases behind her and slamming the door like it made a difference. I didn't stop her. I didn't call her, I just sat down in the silence and exhaled. It didn't feel like a breakup. It felt like waking up. The first week after she left felt like being dropped into an echo chamber. Every corner of the apartment held a memory I didn't want. Her perfume still lingered in the closet. Her favorite mug sat in the sink. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was accusatory. I kept myself together at work, but the moment I stepped inside the door, the weight came crashing down. I'd sit in the dark, scrolling through old photos, rereading texts, trying to understand how love had turned into contempt. People reached out. You okay, man? She was always a little intense. Maybe it's for the best. I smiled, nodded, lied, but inside I felt like a hollow version of myself. There was one night I hit bottom. I had 3 whiskeys, skipped dinner, and just sat on the balcony staring down at the traffic. I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to feel either. I wanted the ache in my chest to go numb. That was the night I realized I wasn't grieving her. I was grieving who I had been when I believed in her. The next morning, I called a therapist. Not because I thought it would fix me, but because I knew I couldn't keep pretending I was fine. I also dusted off an old gym membership I hadn't used in years. At first, it was just something to fill the time. But slowly, those 6 a.m. workouts became rituals, sweating out the bitterness, rebuilding rep by rep. I started journaling, cooking, reading books I used to put off. I deleted our pictures, blocked her number. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't chasing anyone else's version of success. I was just trying to remember who I was before I forgot myself in someone else's dream. A year can change everything, if you let it. 12 months after she walked out, I barely recognized the man I used to be, the one who waited for scraps of affection, the one who mistook criticism for guidance. That guy was gone. I'd lost a wife, but I had found my spine. I launched a consulting business with 2 former colleagues. We'd been kicking the idea around for years, but I was always too hesitant, too scared of failing. Funny how heartbreak has a way of burning down fear. Business grew fast. My face started showing up on panels, podcasts, LinkedIn articles. Suddenly, the same quiet demeanor she once called passive became my superpower in negotiations. Clients trusted me because I didn't have to talk over anyone to be heard. Then, one day, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Proud of how far you've come. I didn't even need to check the contact. It was Tessa. I stared at the message for a full minute. Not because I felt anything. Not anger, not love, not regret, just silence. The twist wasn't her reaching out. It was the calm I felt reading it. She wanted to see what I'd become. Maybe she thought I'd throw her success crumbs. Maybe she expected gratitude or curiosity, or even a hint of longing, but all I felt was detachment. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned off my phone, got back to work, and let her words dissolve into nothing. She had left me because I wasn't alpha enough. Now, without ever chasing the title, I'd built a life more powerful than anything she could control. And the best part? She'd have to watch it all from the sidelines. It started small. She followed me on Instagram again, then on LinkedIn. Then her likes started showing up. Quiet, calculated, always on the photos where I looked strongest. Speaking at conferences, signing deals, standing with teams that respected me. At first, I ignored it, but then mutual friends started saying things like, "She's been asking about you. I think she regrets leaving. She said you finally became the man she always knew you could be." That last one hit different. Finally became? I was always this man, just buried under her expectations, under her manipulations. I didn't become him because she left. I became him because I stopped trying to meet her approval. I began noticing subtle comments on my posts. "So proud of your growth. You always had this in you." One day she even replied to a story. "This version of you is magnetic." I didn't reply. Not once. Not even with a scene, because now my silence had weight, and that weight crushed her more than any words ever could. I kept growing, financially, physically, emotionally. I shared little victories, but never to gloat. I wasn't flaunting. I was documenting, and the more I posted, the more she unraveled, liking, reacting, clinging to the version of me she never bothered to nurture. I had become everything she claimed she wanted. But I had done it on my own. In her absence, she used to say I wasn't assertive, that I didn't lead. Now she was chasing a shadow of the man she threw away, and all I had to do was nothing, no contact, no closure, just undeniable evidence that I didn't need her validation. Only space to become who I always was. I didn't plan to see her again, but life has a cruel sense of humor. I was invited to speak at a business expo. Downtown, nothing major, just a leadership panel. I arrived early, shook hands, made small talk. Then I spotted her across the room, standing near the hors d'oeuvres in a tight navy dress and glass of champagne in hand. Tessa. She saw me before I could look away. Her expression flickered, shock, then something else, something almost nervous. She walked over slowly, like the ground wasn't steady under her heels. "Wow," she said, smiling too tightly. "You look different," I nodded. "Thanks," she paused, trying to hold eye contact. "I've been following your stuff. You're doing really well." "I am." She waited for me to ask how she was. I didn't. There was this awkward silence between us, thick and buzzing. "You're not going to say anything?" she finally asked. I looked at her for a moment. "You already said everything that mattered when you left." She blinked. The confidence in her posture dropped an inch. "I was wrong, you know," she said softly. "About you. About what I thought I needed." I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I just gave a small nod and said, "I know." Then I turned toward another colleague who had just waved me over and said, "Excuse me." I walked away before she could respond. That moment, leaving her mid-sentence, mid-regret, felt like more closure than any fight or apology ever could, because I didn't need to prove anything, not anymore. She had to look me in the eye and see exactly what she lost, and I had to look at her and feel absolutely nothing. After that night, I didn't hear from her again directly, but her shadow lingered. Mutual friends started telling me things, how she cried after the event, how she told people she blew the best thing she ever had. Someone even said she showed up drunk at a gathering and said, "He became everything I wanted." After I stopped believing in him, but I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel angry. I felt calm. Not the fragile kind that hides pain beneath the surface. This was different. This was the kind of calm that comes from knowing you don't need anyone's permission to be whole. She used to accuse me of lacking ambition, of being passive. But the truth is, I was always building something. I just didn't build it loud enough for her. Now I was standing on the foundation she never had the patience to help lay. I wasn't bitter. I didn't want revenge, I just didn't need her anymore. People online kept asking about my glow-up. They wanted tips, timelines, secrets, but the only thing I ever said was this: don't rebuild to prove them wrong. Rebuild because you finally believe you're worth more. Tessa became a lesson, not a scar, and while she kept watching from afar, liking posts she'd never dare comment on, I kept moving forward, not to hurt her, not to win, just because I finally loved the silence she once mistook for weakness. It had become my peace, and hers. Hers had become the echo of a decision she couldn't undo. A year and a half after the split, I moved to a new city. New apartment. New skyline. New mornings that started with quiet coffee and ended with a sense of earned rest. I wasn't chasing anything anymore. Not approval, not redemption. Just peace. One evening, I was watching the sun dip behind the skyline, the orange light spilling across my office desk, when my phone buzzed. It was a long email. From her, Tessa. It started with, "I don't expect you to respond." She went on to say she was sorry for the belittling, the comparisons, the cruelty wrapped in constructive criticism. She admitted she didn't understand what strength really looked like until she lost it. She said she hoped I could forgive her someday. I read it once, then again, and then I deleted it. Not out of hate, not out of revenge, out of peace. Because the man she once called weak no longer needed her words to heal. I had already done that work myself. I've learned since then that power isn't how loud you speak or how dominant you act in a room. Power is stillness. It's restraint. It's knowing who you are and refusing to shrink or perform for anyone else's idea of who you should be. I used to think love meant adjusting, compromising, changing to keep someone from walking away. Now I know love without respect is a transaction, and I refuse to sell myself short again. Tessa taught me that, maybe without meaning to, and for that I'm grateful. She thought she left a man she could shape. But really, she walked away from the one who would rise without her. And now, from across the digital void, she watches a life that used to be hers unfold without her name on it. But me? I sleep well. I smile often. And I never had to raise my voice to win.